Attendance. But I think. We just get it. Let's go grab some food.
Are we good to start, Kristen?
I'm gonna start.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. They were just saying, Tim was saying there's, a traffic tie-up in Hayden, so people may be wandering in late to this meeting. Frank was ahead.
I was ahead of you.
All right, well, let's call the meeting to order at 6:03. You have the roll sheet up,
I
Chris-
do.
okay? You wanna call roll? I'll try to let you know who's online.
Sonia Macy.
Here.
So they don't mess you up.
Miranda Couch.
Okay.
Sorry.
Doug Overton.
I'm here online.
Thank you, Doug. Ken Brenner
Yep. Here,
and Julie Baxter.
Julie will not make it.
Stephen Hinkemeyer.
Here,
We don't have anyone for Rio Blanco County. Or I have it empty, is that right?
No, that's me.
Andy Ross. He's not here.
here,
Did you want,
did you call Mary O'Sullivan for Real Blanco?
No, that's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah, Mary O'Sullivan.
Sullivan.
Sorry, guys, I couldn't hear you. I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Who's that? Mario Sullivan.
That was Andy.
Irrigation season.
So, Mary, that's who answered. So now we're on to Andy.
Andy Rossi.
Here.
No, he's here.
He's here. I'm sorry. Okay. Mike Camlin. And Sean Welder.
He's here. He was in the hall. Oh, he's here.
Yeah. And Jason.
Eric and I talked about it, they just go through.
Jay. Okay.
This coming week, just a free hot water trip.
No,
I thought he was here, but
all right. Alden Vandenbrink.
Greetings and salutations.
All right. Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Good.
Hi, how are you? Rebecca Reed. Good. Here, how are you?
Good.
Callie Switchfield.
yeah, I don't think she told me she wasn't gonna make it, I think.
Tim Sullivan.
Tim's here somewhere.
Yeah, he's here.
Here.
All right. Will Myers. Yeah.
Here. He's here.
Kent Bertrand.
Here.
Yeah. Anything.
Yeah, right. Frank Calhoun.
Here.
Hello there.
Is she online? Oh.
And Jeff Myers. And is Doug Monger still here?
Yep, I'm here.
And Jeff Comstock? And Doug Davis? And Charles Whitman?
Here.
Yeah.
Chris Collins?
I'm here online.
Jennifer Holloway?
Oh, I'm online too.
How's Dave?
I'm here online.
Bill Badaracta? Vince Wilczek?
Good, I got one leg. The other music.
You're at Dickinson? Patrick Damon on tour? Jonathan Bowler?
Ever. It's been a while.
No, it's.
Is there anybody speak? Thank you.
Yes, that's everybody.
All right.
And you'll pick up you'll pick up the rest that are online or in the room. So let's go around the room for the people that are not members. Can you introduce yourself?
Yep, Stephen Hampton, I'm the district fisheries biologist for BLM. I cover this whole northwest district, so currently Craig and Weaver.
Welcome. Okay.
My name's Alex Hopkins, at large, I suppose. If you know what I mean. But not a steamboat, passionate about our rivers, care quite a bit about the river community, and, yeah, I'm taking it.
Okay.
Happy Barnes, I'm here, on my JC Temple Reservoir.
You're gonna be rancher in Rio Blanco County and on the board of the White River Alliance. And the Meeker must stay Mako, which I would do all time too long to leave.
I'm Lee Burke. I work for Friends of the Yampa, just here as a guest tonight.
I think that's it for in the room. Kristen, if you wanna pick up the online folks as they come in and out. Okay, so our first order of business is to review and approve the agenda. Do I have any comments on the agenda?
Like to add a 13E, just a short headwaters of Colorado stakeholder meeting update.
Okay. On number 14. Our next meeting is not today.
Well, it is, but
Yeah, it is. So July 9th in Meeker, and I think I thought it said 240 County Road 7 for the firehouse, but I think it's just 7th Street, is that right? Okay. So I did that. Any other changes to the agenda?
Sorry, can you repeat when the actual next meeting is?
July 9th?
And it's a day meeting, right?
So we're gonna do a Peppo tour during the day. And then we talked about maybe starting the meeting at 5. And ending at like 7 or 7:30 in Meeker at the firehouse.
It's a long day.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
I have one more amendment.
Yes,
I'd like to pass around the canopy sign up sheet if we could, around the table, so. It's got all the different dates of some events around the basin. If you could please sign up for the canopy or a table this summer, that would be fantastic.
okay. So a couple of one addition and 2 corrections to the agenda. I don't hear any other items to add to the agenda, so
Brenner moves to approve.
thanks, Ken.
Alphone seconds.
Okay, thanks, Frank. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda with the noted changes, please say aye.
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 Discussion, why is there no public comment any longer? Or am I missing
It
it?
is.
It's at 5?
Perfect,
Yes.
awesome, thank you.
Okay, so all not in favor of changing the agenda, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, the agenda is approved. So review and approve the March 8th, 2025 minutes. Has everybody got a chance to look at those? I reviewed them. Kristen did a really good job with them. I don't think I had to say the correction, so. That's it. All right, take the motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. This is Sonia.
Tim?
Why don't you do it? I'll second.
Oh,
It's on your rules as well.
okay. All right, any discussion on the minutes? In the room or online? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
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 Opposed, please say nay. Okay, minutes are approved. All right, public comment for items not on the agenda. 3 minutes per individual, 5 minutes per group. Do we have anybody that wants to comment on something that's not on the agenda? In the room or online?
I would chime in if I can. I don't know if you are aware of the group work that Nature Conservancy's been working with BLM to do in this area, like the Tampa basins. Doing a lot of the low-tech process-based restoration. But there's a talk this year of doing a workshop similar to they held last year on Yellow Creek on Willow Creek north of Craig. So as that kind of comes together, I can get that information out. And if anybody wanted to come, any landowners, anybody that would like to be part of that, we're trying to plan that for this year.
Okay. So either contact Sally or Kristen at just at the admin at YWG.com. And they can get it to our distribution list and get the information. Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll close comment. CWCB update, budget and report. Jeff or Jenna?
Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Great. Yep, so you got
Congratulations, Jeff. Give us the scoop.
thanks. Not a whole lot to report. A lot of sleeping, a lot of diaper changes, a lot of you know how that goes. But I do have some CWCB updates for you all, which I think you'll be more interested in. I'll start with the water supply update. So April 2025 was the 15th driest April in the 130-year record in Colorado, which resulted in some early snow melt this year. And the drought monitors indicating expanding drought conditions across the West Slope and in the Arkansas Valley over the past month. Currently, 75% of the state is in at least D0 drought. And as of May 8th, the snowpack is statewide is 59% of the median, and reservoir storage about 92% of the median. If you're interested in more up-to-date numbers, you can tune into the Water Conditions Monitoring Committee webinar. The next one that's a standing monthly meeting. If you're not aware of it by now, the next one is May 20th from 9:30 to 11. Also wanted to mention for those of you who represent covered entities, it's that time of the year again. 1051 data deadline is coming up June 30th for the calendar year 2024. Reminder that this data is required along with a American Waterworks Association M36 water loss audit if you're a covered entity. CWCB offers free training through the Water Loss Initiative to educate providers on how to perform an M36 audit if you're interested in that. If you have questions about 1051 requirements or the Water Loss Initiative, please reach out to Sam Stein or Kevin Reedy. I'll drop a bunch of links in the chat when I'm done here, along with their contact information. Also, just wanted to mention that we can provide accommodations for non-covered entities that want to submit 1051 data but don't want to submit a water loss audit. Let's see. Also wanted to let you know the fluvial hazard mapping team is requesting participation in a brief survey about training needs for fluvial hazard mapping. So based on the survey results that we get, CWCB is planning a monthly training series through the summer, fall, and winter. So we're looking for responses. We encourage you to respond either as a team lead or as a team, or you can share the survey with members of your team to complete individually. The more input, the better, because what we learn through this real short survey will inform the training series. So that will be one of the links that I drop in the chat as well. Also wanted to mention a couple CWCB just kind of staffing and resource updates. So in the upcoming months, we will be hiring 2 newly created positions, one in the flood and watershed protection section to run the water supply measurement program that was created from House Bill 1115. And then another one in the water supply planning section to assist the CWCB in developing the technical update for the Colorado Water Plan. That new staff member, the special projects manager for the water plan, will establish and lead the technical advisory groups that I know most of you are familiar with and align planning efforts across agencies to ensure the best methodological input to guide the technical update and future iterations of the Colorado Water Plan. The state fiscal year ends June 30th. So if you haven't already heard from your grant managers, this is a big time of year for us. Grantees will likely be hearing from grant managers in the upcoming weeks about spending information and invoiced things and things like that to make sure we close out the fiscal year appropriately and on time. I also wanted to mention a couple one thing that I've mentioned in the past here, CWCB has developed new educational infographics. I'm sure Ken and Sally might talk about this a little bit later, but we have developed new educational infographics for each of the river basins in Colorado for use in public education and outreach. They were developed in partnership with the PEPO Basin coordinators and Basin Roundtable members, and we have both print and digital versions available for public use if you're interested in that.
I just passed out a copy of each of the different basins, and people are gonna take a quick glance at them and pass them along to their left.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Figured you were all over it. It'll go nicely with the canopies. More information for you all to hand out with some water plan branding and some good information there. I also just wanted to mention some upcoming CWCB deadlines. June 1st, WSRF deadline coming up. Also, June 1st is the PEPO Basin Coordinator grants and the PEPO statewide deadline as well. And then we have a water plan grant deadline coming up July 1st. We have $36.77 million available in the water plan grant program for this fiscal year. For the upcoming fiscal year. So that'll be broken into two cycles, as usual. The first being that July 1st deadline that's coming up, and then the next December 1st. So we encourage project identification, and if you're interested with specific projects, to reach out to, in your case, Ashley Garrison, who's on the call. Reach out to her early and often. A lot of funding available. I think that's all I've got. Oh, I just actually wanted to mention the second annual One Water Day. I think I mentioned it back in March, but just a reminder, that's coming up June 20th. That is held in conjunction with the Watershed Summit at the Botanic Gardens in Denver. And it's an event designed to bring together representatives from communities across Colorado for an engaging discussion of one water planning, management, and collaboration strategies. This year's theme for that is managing water for thriving communities, and we'll focus on stormwater and the urban ecosystem, highlighting the benefits of integrated stormwater management and collaboration across utilities. So the One Water programming is from 9 to 12, and then the Shed Summit is from 1 to 5 that day. It's usually a really great event, so I encourage participation if you can make it happen. I think that's all I've got. I'll certainly take questions.
Okay, any questions for Jeff? Here in the room? Any questions online for Jeff? I don't hear any. I think you're safe, Jeff.
Let me off the hook easy tonight. All right.
No, your first one back, we didn't want to stress you out.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
Sorry, I'm late. I had cows to get through. So on that matter, I probably, Jeff did a pretty good job representing what CWCB's got going on. I went to my first meeting in March, then that's like drinking through a fire hose. I kept my mouth shut and my hands in my pockets and tried to pay attention, but at any rate, we have a meeting next week, looking really good, like a really good meeting, and looking forward to it. I think on the agenda, we have a lot of in-stream flow stuff, and of course the Shoshone stuff. And so it ought to be a really good dialogue. Would like to see a lot of you guys there. Off the CWCB. One of the things that's really concerned me, and I've had, I don't know how many phone calls here just in the last couple of days, is water in the Yampa and so forth. We were at, when we did the river meetings, we were at 98 or 99%. And we're at 47 now. And I'm getting calls from ag producers already saying, hey, where's the water? I can't wave a magic wand, but yeah, I think it's gonna be a tough sell. And so you'll hear me whine and complain and stick up for those guys, but by gosh, I've got to do that because they are ag people. So with that being said, I'll move on. I know we've got a tight schedule, so let's move on.
Anybody have any questions for Mike here in the room or online? Rebecca?
Mention that the meeting with the community in Steamboat.
Oh, no, I didn't. It's close. That's why I'm saying it's Yampa Valley. So I'd love to see you guys there. The dialogue's not in the meeting, it's in the drinks afterwards. So, And as you know, I love to do that, so stop by and say hello.
Do we have a budget for that?
I'll buy your first drink.
The grand, like.
It is at the Steamboat Grand, yes.
Wednesday time,
It's Wednesday and Thursday, this showing will be around like 1.
I didn't hear that.
Late evening.
Shoshone's one on Wednesday. Or on
Yeah,
Thursday.
the instant flow section begins at 1:10. I don't think they're the first one. But Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm guessing that was Rebecca.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff, I was just saying what time the in-stream flow, portion of the meeting starts.
Yeah, that is on Wednesday, I believe. And it's the first agenda item after lunch is if everything's on time. There's a number of in-stream flow acquisitions going to the board this round. The Shoshone project will be part of that. I think there's going to be a pretty long presentation and public comment period towards the end of the day there. So they're basically, the in-stream flow acquisitions are essentially taking up the second half of the first day on Wednesday.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. If we don't have any more questions for Mike.
Just Mike, the IBCC meeting, the next one is in June, the 25th in Grand Junction. We've set up a subcommittee structure and we've been meeting monthly, working on a bunch of materials that I think you might find very interesting. So if you can't be there in person, certainly it's available remotely.
Yeah, if you could email me some nice stuff, I would love to show in person.
Yeah, excellent. Will do.
All right. Next up, Water Commissioner's Corner. Amy, are you still on?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Okay, let me try to share my screen.
Stop sharing. Okay.
All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm going to keep my update pretty brief. I know you have a packed agenda, and I don't have a whole lot to say tonight, so I will keep it quick, but I will stick around for any questions you might have. So as I like to do generally in these presentations, I just want to reorient us in the process and talk a little bit about where we are and what we're doing. So as you all are very aware, the 07 guidelines expire in 2026. And we are focused on, as we have been for a while now, working with the Colorado River Basin states to try to develop a consensus approach for the post-2026 operations of Lake Powell. We are also in a NEPA process. So at the end of the day, it's the Bureau of Reclamation that is really driving the bus, that will be selecting a preferred alternative. But the hope is that the basin states can work together to develop a consensus-based approach that we can fit in as a preferred alternative. The timeline is really tight. So you may have heard Reclamation or others set various deadlines that we may be perceived as blowing through. What I will say is that we really, if we're going to reach a 7-state consensus, time is really of the essence. So working with the other states is really where all of our attention and energy is focused right now. Because we have, like I said, a limited time to insert a consensus position into that NEPA process that Reclamation is in. So, if we backtrack just a little bit, in December 2024, the Upper Division states submitted some refinements to the alternative that we submitted previously. And then in January of this year, that was the last time that we kind of formally heard from Reclamation on the NEPA process when they put out a report of a few different alternatives, a range of alternatives. And I'll talk about both of these a little bit more. But you've already heard me talk a lot about the Upper Division States alternative, so I'll keep it brief. So we submitted some refinements back in December that were really focused on optimizing performance of our alternative. We went a little bit lower on the low end of the Pell release curve, a little bit higher on the high end to optimize performance at Powell and Meade and to decrease the frequency with which the reservoirs would hit critical elevations. That was really the goal of that. We also provided some additional detail about our parallel activities, really just letting reclamation and others know you should really only be looking at a reasonable range of potential conservation activities and potential releases from upstream initial units. That should be driven by hydrologic conditions. We know that we cannot ensure a certain amount of conservation in a given year because of hydrologic variability, but to the extent that's being looked at in the model, it should be done within a reasonable range is essentially what we were saying there. So I know you're all familiar with this. I know we've talked about it before, but I think it's an important thing to remind folks of because we stand by the Upper Division States alternative. We still think it performs really well. And at the end of the day, the essence of the Upper Division States alternative is supply-driven operations. And that is what we continue to be focused on in the basin state discussions. And that's what we continue to pursue is we need operations that actually respond to hydrologic conditions. So that is what we continue to push for and that what we are working with the other basin states to try to achieve in a consensus-based alternative. There's a lot of words on this slide. I won't go into it in detail, but I think you're all pretty familiar with this as well. I just wanted to talk briefly about the alternatives report that Reclamation put out in January. I'll tell you first the things I'm not going to talk a lot about, which are the bottom three, the federal authorities hybrid, cooperative conservation, and basin hybrid. Those all have a range of interesting, somewhat novel concepts. And the reason I'm categorizing these together is because as Reclamation stated in the alternatives report, they would need 7-state agreement and or federal legislation to actually implement these alternatives. So additional actions would need to be taken to actually make any of those three work. The no action alternative, Reclamation states pretty clearly in the report that they do not see that as a viable alternative. It's not really a feasible alternative. But for those familiar with how NEPA works, the no action alternative is still important, right? It's still an important part of the process. I would draw your attention to the federal authorities alternative, which the report says is the only alternative that Reclamation could implement tomorrow if no agreement were reached by the basin states and no additional legislation were passed. So that says something about where Reclamation's head is at or was at when they put this report out. We've had a change in administration, of course, since this report came out. At this time, we haven't gotten any indication that they're going to go back and change this report. That being said, is this exactly what we're going to see in the draft EIS? That's yet to be seen. So a lot of unknowns. I feel like I always caveat everything I say with that there's uncertainty everywhere you look in the Colorado River Basin. But again, what I really want to emphasize today is that we are at the table with the other basin states really trying to work towards a consensus that meets our needs and our goals for sustainable supply-driven operations at Powell and Meade. At the end of the day, that's really what has to happen. So we're committed to that process. I know there's been a lot in the news lately. There's been a lot of interesting media stories and a lot of people commenting on things that they may or may not really know about. And we have been active in responding to those stories. We've provided a number of statements in response, but here's the other thing that I would say to you all is that we're really focused on doing the work of negotiating, and we are really hesitant to say a whole lot in the media space and the communication space that would get in the way of that. So we're trying to put our heads down and get to a good consensus-based solution that adequately protects Colorado and our water users, Commissioner Mitchell remains true to her negotiating principles that you all are familiar with. Those are continuing to guide our approach and our strategy. So we're really, really focused on those negotiations. We are responding to the media inquiries that come in, but we're really trying to keep our focus where it should be right now. So I think that's everything I have. Happy to take any questions that you all might have for me.
Anybody have a question here in the room for Amy? Anybody online have a question for Amy? Ken?
Amy, Ken Brenner, in our discussion earlier today, one of the kind of nebulous discussions that, or terms that are still in there is dealing with the actual hydrology. But I'm not sure that there's really a clear consensus with the lower and upper basins on exactly what does that mean? What does actual hydrology mean? What's methodology? What set of metrics are acknowledged to be the document that would quantify and explain how we would equitably apportion that actual hydrology? Is that a pertinent part of the discussions that you're having right now, or do you feel comfortable commenting?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ken. I'm not gonna get into the details of the ongoing negotiations, but what I will say is that that is part of the discussion is supply-driven operations. What does that mean? How do we define that? There are a few different ways that you can look at that. If you look at the Upper Division States alternative, the way that we, worked through that is by looking at Powell elevation. At a date certain, you look at Powell elevation, and that's going to tell you what you should release from Powell. There are other ways of doing that. There is plenty of information that Reclamation publishes, like natural flow, things like that, that are also indicators of hydrologic conditions. And I think our focus is really on ensuring that if we're going to take that approach, which we think we should, of supply-driven operations, we need some indicator that appropriately recognizes or reflects hydrologic conditions, is not open to manipulation by one party or the other. That is a true metric for hydrologic conditions. So that is part of the discussion. Those are the types of issues that we're talking about. I would say, I heard you use the phrase, equitable. I can't remember I heard you say equitably, and I think that's great. And I think it's important that we remember that the compact, did divide the river 50-50, with, of course, an additional 1 million acre feet to the lower basin. And that is, critical to keep in mind. It's also important to keep in mind what we're talking about here, which is really, what are the operations of Powell and Meade? When you look at what the scope of the 07 guidelines and the post-2026 process, it's really, what is the operational framework for these reservoirs? So that's really what we're focused on. Hopefully that was a little helpful.
Thank you. No, that was.
I have a question.
Yeah, fine.
Amy, Mike Camblin. Hey, and I've been talking to Becky a little bit about this, but so I've heard rumors, like a lot of rumors, that the city of Cheyenne is talking about picking up water at a Little Snake from bags and shipping it to Wyoming, or I mean to Cheyenne. And the questions that have come to me is, are they going to continue with the SCPP program next year? And I know you probably don't have that answer, but I guess this is more of a statement than a question, but it concerns me. What do you know about this?
Yeah. I don't know that I can get into the details on that today, but what I will say is that I guess to your question about SCPP, there is not reauthorization for SCPP at this time through 2026. So just to speak to that directly, There, is a bill pending that Senator Hickenlooper sponsored, but it has not gone anywhere yet. So we, at this time, do not have authorization for SCPP this year, or next year. I think, it's yet to be seen what actually happens with that bill, but I think that this is what I'll say. If SCPP does go forward for another year, going into the post 2026 world, I think that it would be good, as we have done in the past, to really consider lessons learned and adjust course as needed for future iterations. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amy? Okay, thanks, Amy.
Thanks. Good to see you all.
All right, you too. All right, that brings us to action items. First up is grant committee update, Frank.
Yes, Sally, do you wanna pull up and I'll preface this, 31 slides. We have, a lot to talk about tonight, so, did you approve all those, Jeff? Sit back, settle in. Get some more pizza, get some more to drink, because there's a lot on the agenda with respect to grants. So if you want to go to the next slide, Sally. This is a overview of the agenda. I'm going to first start off with just a quick update on the funding and where we stand with respect to this last cycle in 2025. And then there's 4 grant applications that we are going to be taking into consideration this evening. Those are identified up there. And then we have 1 request for a letter of support. There was a lot of information loaded up to the drive on the website. Couple examples, the draft minutes from the grants meeting. We actually had 2 meetings this cycle. We met on April 9th and April 28th. And then each grant has their own folder on that website with all the respective documents. There's also a summary document, which if anyone hasn't had enough chance to look at all this stuff, that's probably the best one that really gives a quick overview of all the grants. And then the draft letter of support is in there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think Steve has since modified that a bit. I'm going to let him chime in once we get to that point on the agenda. So Sally, if you want to go to the next slide. I wanted to, and this is always a little bit hard to read, but right now our WSRF balance is about $518,000. And that just includes the first cycle of grants, which was about 192,000. The grants that we approved on the 3rd cycle, which was the Yampa River Reforestation Project, was about 49,000. And then the grants that are under consideration tonight equal about 199,000. So if all these grants would get approved, we would end this year with about $270,000 in our reserve, if you will. If everyone recalls, one of our goals is to get below that $450,000 threshold. And our accounts were eligible for the full $300,000 in funding from the CWCB. We're definitely going to get there if all these grants get approved. The other thing I wanted to mention is of the 4 grants tonight, the first one, which is the PEPO coordinator, it's for $25,000. That money comes directly from the state through their PEPO grant coordination program, if you will. So that would not affect this balance. The other 3 grants, which are under consideration, which equals the 199,000, those would solely come from the local basin roundtable funds, because the state has fully allocated and fully all those monies that they
budgeted for this year are spoken for. So all the money that's under consideration this evening would come from the local funds. But at the end of the day, we would end up with about $270,000 in our reserve account. I'll pause there and ask if there's any questions on the financial status. Seeing and hearing none, let's move on. The first grant we're gonna hear, if you want to advance to the next slide, Sally, is the Beppo Basin Coordinator. And Sally will be presenting this one. And essentially, this is the request for the $25,000 that's allocated through the CWCB grant program every year for basically fiscal year 2026. So Sally, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Thanks, Frank. Well, Patrick is sad he couldn't be here tonight, but he had another meeting. And so I just wanted to explain part of our contract of how we work PEPO between Patrick and I. The fiscal agent for this grant is the Ag Alliance. And so when I moved over to Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, I brought this grant with me, and Patrick is still doing all the budgeting and I'm kind of doing the legwork. So we're still working together quite a bit. We meet often and we work together on this budget and whatever else other messaging we're gonna do in the future. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, since I'm not sure that was always clear. But what we're asking for in this next $25,000 budget, as you can see from year to year, we've got some of the same things that we ask for yearly, with a little bit of inflation built in. So really what we are asking for, we have $15,000 for a PEPO project. And that's minus the $3,250 we use for outreach, which is the canopy and things like that. So all in total, we have $11,758 for a 2026 project, which we are hoping to get. And so for that, we're in our scope of work, we'd like to ask for help with messaging. So we would like to ask Blue Fire Consulting to take our state messaging and turn it into some advertising and also social media help for the next year. And if we do get this grant, it would be, we would contact them in November and try and get them under contract. We've got a little bit of money kind of built in there. So if we do go over this, our budget with the story map, which is supposed to be done in December, if it takes a little longer, we've got a little bit of leeway there also in that $15,000. But we thought it was important to kind of address our state messaging, since we've been talking about it for so long, and with the new infographics that are out. That's kind of the one thing we haven't done, is really address our print ads and our social media. So that's something that we think we can use more than 1 year, especially if we make these print ads engaging and useful. So I can go through some of these things. The task one is what I do for all these meetings, all the minutes, uploading things on YouTube, agenda. Then we've got the print and meeting notices, getting ready for these meeting notices. And then we've got recorder. Kristen is our recorder for task 3. Task 4 is the canopy, which we just put around. So that's paying $50 if people take out the canopy. It's for things to give out to kids. And so the rest would be the PEPO project. So hopefully we can address our advertising and get that in line. So that is our ask for you today. Also, I do want to mention that we were waived our 25% match. So from the state, so we didn't have to come up with that, and that has been since we started this Pebble grant, so, we did ask beforehand if that was gonna be the case, so it is the case this year, so we didn't have to come up with a match.
Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to, as the chair of the Pebble Committee, I'll be recusing myself from the vote. And, just let you know that obviously, the Pebble Committee voted unanimously to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions? Sally, at this time. Over to our chairman, Meyer, to minister the vote.
Okay, any questions for anybody online? Hearing none.
Steve, this is Myers. I move that we approve the $25,000 Pebble grant.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? In the room or online? Hearing none, all in favor of approving this grant request for CWCB Pebble money for 25,000, please say aye.
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 Okay, opposed, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it.
Great, Sally, if you want to advance a few slides. There you go. Our next grant on tonight's agenda is for the Fortification Creek Irrigation Diversion and Fish Passage Project. Bill Brink will be presenting on behalf of the owners. And the owners are Dwayne and Janelle Zimmerman, and I think they are online. Yeah, along with Phil. What we put in the on the folder, if you will, on the website is this presentation, and then there's the Ample green application, of course, the CWCB grant application, and then the summary of this grant is in there, and then this was one of the grants that the committee heard first at April 9th at that meeting, and then there was a number of requests made of the applicant, and we had to ask a few questions of CWCB about this grant, and then we had another follow-up meeting on April 28th. Those grant meeting minutes are in the actual folder too. There's also several letters of support for this grant. So a lot of information in the folder about that. Sally, if you want to go to the next slide. So Phil, if you're online and ready to go, we got your first slide up. I'll let you take it from here.
All right, thank you, Frank, and good evening, everyone. Appreciate giving us a few minutes to talk about this potential project. So this is the Zimmerman Ranch. It's located about 13 miles north of Craig on Fortification Creek. The ranch irrigates land that they grow forage on both the east and west side of the creek. Applicants are Dwayne and Janelle Zimmerman. And what this project would entail is replacing a poorly functioning log and rock diversion dam with a multi-step rock and boulder cross vein system that would also be fish and aquatic life friendly. You can advance to the next slide, please. So the original structure was destroyed when we had that high runoff back in 23. The applicant moved what they could with boulders and rocks and logs and things to try to push up a dam in order to irrigate. And so let me just say that the one unique aspect of this is that this is not a traditional diversion structure that backs water up and then pushes it down a ditch. This backs water up to pumps, and there's a pump that serves the west side of the creek and another pump that serves the east side of the creek. And so they were able to push up a dam sufficient to kind of enable a pump that's on that serves the east side of the creek, which is about 30 acres. But the high capacity pump, which you see in the lower right there, that has continued to be high and dry. We're simply not able to get a dam high enough to supply that pump. And so that is what the primary objective of this project would address. I would point out that as currently conceived, this project with the revised multi-step rock structure would be fish and aquatic life friendly. And one thing that I did discover in looking through 303 D list, it's a Department of Public Health and Environment document, is that the main stem of Fortification Creek is impaired for aquatic life use support and is considered a high priority. You can go on to the next slide. So this is the top right, an aerial of what you see. There's a pump serving the right side. That's that higher word pump there you see. And then the lower one is that high capacity pump, irrigated fields on both sides, and then where the diversion structure is. And so then in the lower right, you see, again, this is just conceptual at this point. No surveying has been done, no assessment has been conducted, but the idea of putting in small incremental steps and checking the water up, both to bring it up to that higher level to supply that high capacity pump and to enable better aquatic life movement through this whole corridor. It would also help to mitigate erosion. There is some erosion below the dam, and particularly when high flows go through there, it can be quite damaging. And one of the things that these structures do is they do help to stabilize the areas within and below where they are located. Finally, it would also enable a low water access for vehicles to cross over and access the west side of the property, which was in place with the prior diversion structure, and that's the one that got washed out. So you can go on to the next one. As far as the budget goes, we were asked to put together both task 1 and task 2, which is really the whole kit and caboodle for the whole project. We'd originally just intended to ask for task 1, but CWCB requested that we include really the whole project. However, that is with a caveat, and that is we are only asking for funding right now for task 1. We've included an estimated budget for task 2. That would be the construction element, but that would come later, and that would be for another day. So we would request right now $28,300 from the WSRF grant. And then the applicant would come up with $94.69 cash match for a total cost of $37,769. That's the number that we got from an engineering firm that specializes in this type of work. That was their estimate, and so that's how we came up with this breakdown in cost. That $28,300 represents about 75%. So the applicant would be coming up with that 25% match. I would look down lower, you see the total project cost estimated between what would potentially be requested through a secondary grant of $150,000. That would be the two grants combined, and then the match funds to bring that to $306,653. I wouldn't spend too much time focusing on that at this moment. The second phase could change in terms of the numbers. We would hope that it would change downward, but you never know. But right now, as I say, we're really just looking at task 1. And so that's, I guess, where I will conclude my remarks for now, and then be happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Thank you, Bill, appreciate it. I'll open it up for questions. You're the chairman, so.
Really? All right, I forgot. So Phil, this is Steve Hinkmeyer. My phone's been lighting up today and yesterday on this project. And I guess the thought is, there's lots of different ways to slice and dice and get this project done. Is your first step on this gonna be to look at alternatives, different alternatives to build this? Whether you try to raise the, put a diversion in and raise the water up, maybe lower the pumps. There's probably 3 or 4 different things I can think of, or have been told of in the last couple of days, to manage this, to try to solve this problem that the Zimmermans are having. Can you speak to a little bit about what your plan is if this grant is approved?
Yes, and I have also had conversations, and I appreciate that question, Steve. So I think it's a good comment and an observation, and I would offer up that what we would propose is you saw that previous slide where we saw those 7 check structures. That I would consider to be a placeholder. That's just a conceptual design that the engineer that made the bid put together. It's not set in stone by any means. And so what I would offer to the committee is that at such time as the engineer would actually be out and doing the survey, and we would begin discussing and looking at conceptual design, we would ask them to consider multiple options. So that may be fewer structures, a different configuration, raising the water level not quite as high, maybe lowering the pump, some combination of all those things, but what would be most cost effective and most durable? And I think that's what we want to achieve here.
Okay, I mean, most engineering companies, when they work on projects like this, they'll do a 25 or 30% kind of look at the project, lay out the options, gather some input from the owners and others, and then move to, 50 or 60%. And then, once they kind of get all the kinks out, they'll get something that's, 75 to 80% that they're ready to go, bid the project or look for somebody that can complete the work and do the, construction. So is that the way you kind of see this project rolling?
Yeah, I would anticipate that it would. And I would also just mention that since we last talked, Trout Unlimited has indicated beyond their letter of support, which has already been submitted, that they would provide in-kind support just in helping to advise as we discuss what design here might work best for fish passage. And so we really want to try to capture that multi-benefit as much as possible. But I would say initially what we really want to look at before we even get to that 30% design is to have the engineer really kind of hash out what is the best solution here, considering all of the goals.
Okay. Anybody else in the room have a question? Will?
No, I think, Steve and Phil, I talked to both of you guys today, and I think you answered my questions kind of the way that we did on the phone. Kind of a statement is, I was initially concerned with, obviously it's not a ditch diversion, so level control is probably one of your most expensive ways to go about it. And as I reiterated to Phil and Steve kind of captured it too, is like lowering these pumps and altering them gotta be looked at like upfront, because the price tag, conceptually is quite a bit, for hay production. I'm, as the ag rep, I should be in favor of, helping out ag locally, but at the same time, I kind of look at it as like, if we're asking for money, sometimes we gotta be saying, well, if we weren't getting funds, how would our approach be to this, and it's kind of a hefty price tag, for hay production. And So hopefully we can look at some solutions to really get the overall cost down for it. And, you know, just so it looks like we can get some benefit, you know, to the ag producers and also to, you know, some multi-benefits too, for these projects to look good, you know.
I would,
Yeah.
just offer, very briefly, one of the questions that I spent some time on the phone with Ben Wade at the CWCB was, how should this grant be, administered, if you would? And these types of grants, this is not uncommon where you've got a phase one and a phase two. And phase one is what we're seeing and considering tonight for basically design, engineering options, et cetera. And, but Ben did mention that it's always important when these grants come before the director or the CWCB board, that they have an understanding that this is phase one of a bigger project. And these are at this time just estimated construction costs. So, that's why we structured it this way. But I just wanted everyone to understand that's how the way the process works. We set these up to the CWCB for consideration.
I have a quick question too. The letters of support, I see, Trout Unlimited and I see Colorado Ag Water Alliance. Are those the two letters of support from the board? Is that it for the record? Okay.
There would also be letters from Colorado Cattlemen's Association. Not sure that's if that's in the docket yet, but if not, it has been prepared. And then also one from Colorado First Conservation District.
And we don't have those two.
Okay, I'll get those to you.
Thanks, Bill. Could someone tell me how often Fortification Creek goes under administration? Assuming annually?
Yeah, it might look at the records, it goes in. So first water's pulled out sometime around May 1st.
Yeah.
And this particular structure gets called out June 10th.
I was gonna say this or
So it's like basically 5 weeks of water that they're
on a good year.
on a good year, yeah.
Every week.
Yeah, but they're probably already calling water on in the ditch today, who knows? Yeah. But yeah, so it's one CFS absolute right and 3 CFS conditional rights, and the conditional rights are pretty new. I don't remember the exact date.
Except two.
Yes.
Or 2017 water rights, the new water rights are.
It seems like a tremendously large investment for the amount of return that we get. It's just, it's exactly the type of project we want to try to find and support, but just the legal accessibility to the water makes the cost for the number of weeks of water available to produce, makes it a real reach, especially given the WSRF is going away fairly soon.
Yeah.
Wayne or Janelle, what were you? I didn't see who was trying to talk
That was
online.
Aaron Light.
Oh, Aaron.
Oh, there it is, Eric.
I'm sorry, what, Aaron?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Phil, it sounded like Phil couldn't remember the date of their junior water right, and the two junior water rights that I believe he's referring to are 2017 water rights, one at each of the pumps. Both of which I believe are conditional.
Okay.
And
So-
Aaron, when does typically go under administration? What's the history on that?
Well, Fortification Creek goes on call pretty much every year. I don't know exactly, what time of year it goes on call, whether it's sometime in May or June, but I think somebody mentioned sometime toward the end of May, which wouldn't surprise me.
So
Thank
just
you.
to provide a little additional clarity there, I mentioned there were 2 pumps. One of those pumps has a 2017 decree date, and that's 1 CFS to irrigate those 30 acres on the east side. And then on the west side, that is the what's called the Amy pump. That's decreed for 114 acres. And that one is priority number 52. It has a 1 CFS absolute right with an appropriation date of 1965 and adjudication date of 72. And then the other conditional right that Steve mentioned, that's at 3 CFS that they're working on perfecting. That is something that being able to use this high capacity pump would greatly help to perfect that 3 CFS conditional right.
Yeah.
I guess the other, if I could just, one other thing is, Dwayne and Janelle are on the line. I think Dwayne or Janelle, if you would just kind of share how you've used water. I know this discussion and concern around how early the call goes on and your availability of water. But in our discussions, it sounds like the call has gone on, but then the call has been taken off. And that actually has worked out well for your first and second hay cuttings. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, usually it's around the end of May to sometime first, second week of June that the call comes on. And it's typically for 2 to 3 weeks, which usually works out pretty good for us because that's usually about time we've got everything shut down to dry everything out enough to get our first cutting off. And then normally after that, the call goes back off and then we're able to irrigate enough to get a little bit of a second cutting as well. And that's usually around the middle of July, probably when the call usually goes off, because the creek's low enough downstream of us by then that there's not enough water downstream of us to keep irrigating out of it anyway.
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. Will?
So I guess a question is, you folks also have like, center pivots and existing infrastructure in place that's dependent on these pumps, correct?
Pardon me?
Bill or Dwayne?
Can you repeat that question, please?
You guys have existing infrastructure you've already invested in that's depending on these pumps, correct?
The structure that's there right now was there. We moved in here in the fall of 2016, and the structure that's there right now, my understanding, it was put there when the Amy pump was first installed back in the mid-60s.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you got some center pivots out there that you've already invested in.
Yes, we do.
That's kind of where I was
yes,
going.
and
so.
Yes, and we do have 2 center pivots that the structure that's right there now helps keep the water deep enough that the river screens that we have that supplies water to them pivots, it helps them out tremendously.
So that being the case, and also hearing the concern that Ken brought up and we talked about, I'm more in favor of moving ahead with the design process so that we can figure out some ways to kind of get this problem solved and in an economic way so that, we can figure out exactly what we're getting the return on. So I guess that's the long-winded way of saying I'm in support of, moving ahead to design for this.
Is there any more questions?
Frank, exactly what would be involved with terminating the grant after the first phase if it just didn't look economically feasible based on the designs?
It's my understanding, Jeff, that this would be simply one grant for design, engineering, and planning, if you will. So a second grant would have to be applied for, which would have a separate contract.
And the first one is for task 1, the second one is task 2.
That's how.
So the ask tonight is for the 28,000.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so it's all reimbursable. So.
So I think, Will, was that a motion to approve or was it
Yeah, why not?
And I will second that with that understanding. Approval of task one.
Yes.
28.
Okay.
So we can't have the Myers and Myers.
I know, the two Myers, how we can separate that?
Myers are
So the motion is to recommend approval of the grant request for 28,300 of Yampa White Green WSRF funds. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's your second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Any further conversation in the room or online? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving this grant request for $28,300 for the fortification creek irrigation diversion and fish passage project, please say aye.
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 Opposed, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. All right, Frank.
Okay, Sally, if you want to go to the next slide. Our third application is, for the JC Temple number 1 dam rehabilitation project, which is a dam south of Hayden. Kathy Barnes is here. She is the owner of this small reservoir / dam. And then online, we've got Tyler, and I don't want to butcher your name, Tyler, Deza Rio, I believe, and I apologize if that's not correct. Tyler works for the Applegate Group and has been working closely with Kathy and Kathy's son Shane Camaletti on this improvement project, if you will. Again, several documents were in the actual drive on the website. The applications for both the CWCB and for the Yampa White Green are in there. The grant summary, and this one also was heard at 2 meetings of the grants committee, both on April 9th and April 28th. There's one letter of support that was in the actual website. I just received from Kathy this evening another letter of support. This is from the West Route Fire Protection District from Chief Dwyer. And this one is basically a full letter of support because this is I'm reading from the letter here. The reservoir is a critical resource for wildland fire suppression efforts and plays a vital role in protecting lives, property, and natural resources in the region. There's certainly other comments on here, but they are in support of this application. I will get this loaded on the site shortly after this meeting. So if you want to go to the next slide. Before we hand this one over to Tyler, I just want to let everyone know, this one again would be strictly from funding from the local basin roundtable. And they are asking for approximately $77,000 this evening. So that said, Tyler, if you're ready to go, we got your first slide teed up here, so take it away.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, as Frank was saying, my name is Tyler Desiderio. I'm with Applegate Group, engineer. I do a lot of dam rehab projects. And Kathy and Dana Miller with the local dam safety branch kind of brought me on board to help out with this project. So I just kind of like to give a lay of the land. Like Frank said, this dam is owned by Kathy, entirely by Kathy. It's south of Hayden. It was originally constructed in, I think, 1945. That might have been when it's enlarged. The dam height is about 30 feet, has a storage capacity of 454 acre feet. That's for irrigation, water supply, fire protection, and stock water. And kind of the meat of the issues here is that there were some rule changes. The dam safety rules changed in 2020, and dam safety has been kind of slowly reassessing a lot of dams, Kathy's being one of them. and it was recently reclassified from a low to a significant hazard structure. And when we talk about hazard, that is just a hazard rating is an indication of the potential for loss of life or significant damage if this dam were to fail. Low hazard being no loss of life or no significant damage to structures expected to occur. A significant hazard structure is a dam in which no loss of life, but significant damage to structures would occur. And then a high hazard dam is a loss of life is expected to occur during a dam failure. So this dam used to be low. It's now significant. This is kind of a natural phenomenon we in the industry called hazard creep. You know, this dam was here for a very long time before people were in this area in these numbers, and since then a lot of people have built homes and structures and a whole town downstream of this dam, and that's the main reason why this dam was reclassified from low to significant. It's not really Kathy's fault, I would say, but it's dam safety did this analysis, and they found that, you know, there's lots of extensive widespread flooding through the town of Hayden, which upped its rating. And when you go up in a rating, you're now beholden to slightly more stringent dam safety regulations. And currently, the dam is classified as conditionally satisfactory with dam safety actions items identified at the structure. And if we go to the next slide, please. I'd like to kind of highlight the dam safety issues at this dam that our grant request aims to address. So I would say the biggest issue with this dam is the riprap on the upstream slope. It is just in rough shape. I've included pictures here from a site visit I conducted, and there's just large portions missing. It appears that a lot of this riprap has slid down. Dana provided me with like a report, or I guess a construction completion documents from a little over a decade ago. And when this riprap was put in, it was just founded directly on a geotextile. And usually the standard practice for dams is to have a bedding material, and then you put the riprap on top of the bedding that helps lock in the rock and prevent it from sliding down. I think that's a major reason why the riprap is in this shape. And also when I was on site taking a closer look, the riprap there's a lot of rounded stones in there, and you typically want more angular stones that interlock better. And this is an issue, if left unaddressed, wave action, especially in this area, it's super windy. I mean, I'm sure as folks know in this area. So wave action is a serious concern and can slowly kind of erode and eat away at this dam embankment and potentially cause a failure. So that's one of the major issues. Another issue is there's kind of like a persistent crack on the downstream edge of the dam crest. During my site visit, I kind of measured it periodically, and it was about 12 inches to 36 inches deep. Not a huge concern, but once again, at the moment, but if left unattended, it can certainly cause a lot of issues. And also, the dam crest itself is uneven. I have a little profile here using LiDAR data, which is pretty accurate. It matched really well with the GPS measurements I got on site. But I think this chart clearly demonstrates that the dam crest is quite a bit uneven, and we strive to have even dam crests. And the main reason behind that is you want your dam crest as flat as possible. So in case you get an overtopping event, the flows aren't concentrated at a low spot on the dam crest. And when you want to spread out those hydraulic forces as best you can, if they aren't, and if that flow finds its way to a low spot on the dam, it can kind of concentrate that flow and eventually cause a breach by eroding away that material. So yeah, this is just a summary of the main issues we're trying to address here, and then kind of a hand sketch, kind of also demonstrating those in addition to the photos in the chart. Next slide, please. So now going on to what we're actually proposing to do here, I would say this is a pretty simple approach. But, you know, the first thing that we're trying to do is repair the riprap by just infilling it with just kind of filling up those sparse areas. And how we're going to do that is basically clear away the riprap that's there, put down some proper bedding material, somewhere on the order of 6, maybe 9 inches, depending on how much that costs to get on site, and then putting new riprap to fill in these gaps. And I've gotten a quote from a supplier in Craig that has angular stone that would be a really good application here. The other element of this project is just to simply that crack on the downstream edge. We're just proposing excavating that downstream edge to the depth of the crack and then recompacting that material to fix that. And then running basically a grader or a dozer across the dam to level it and get a nice even surface. And I've had that kind of demonstrated here in this cross-section view. It's very preliminary at this point, so keep that in mind. And the total project budget is about 150K. We are requesting about 77K from the Water Supply Reserve Fund. Kathy has approached the Upper Yampa Water Conservation District, and they've kind of indicated that they would likely throw in 25,000. And then Kathy herself is putting in 48K as her own in-kind contribution, which is above the 25% match. I just want to give honorable mention to Kathy as well, that she's already, spending $12,500 on kind of my time doing some of this preliminary analysis, site visits, helping her prepare these grant materials. And kind of another element of this project was the spillway capacity was also something that Dana had identified, but I was able to demonstrate that the spillway has adequate capacity to pass the design storm. So I just wanted to mention that because just to show that, Kathy's putting in the effort and doing her best to keep this dam safe and address the issues. So I guess I'll shut up and take questions, I suppose. Or Kathy, did you want to add anything?
No, you did good, Tyler.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions, both here in the room or online? Great. We'll go to the next slide, Sally.
Okay, so we need a motion for approval of, Jackie?
Oh, I was gonna make the motion.
Oh, so we need approval for grant request for $77,386 in the White Green WSR funds.
So
Like to
moved.
make that motion? No, sir. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion in the room or online? Hearing none. All in favor of approving this grant request for $77,386 for the J.C. Temple #1 Dam Rehabilitation Project, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed to this grant action, please say nay. Okay, unanimous ayes.
Right? Okay, you guys are doing great. Hang in there. 2 more to go.
Thank you, guys.
Sally, to the next one. Thanks, Tyler.
Yep, thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Our next grant application and request is from the Stillwater Reservoir. The Draining and Color Project. This is a project or a component of a project that we've heard before. here at the grants, both at the grants committee level, and of course, the Basin Roundtable. And John Redmond will be presenting. He is with the Bear River Reservoir Company, and they are asking for $94,000 towards this project. And with that, I'll have Sally advance the slide. And John, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Sure can. So are you?
All right. Well, thanks everyone for letting us come back with, this is our 2025 addendum. As Frank mentioned, we did have a presentation where we had made a request last year. Wanted to provide a little bit of background on what the reservoir, the project is, talk about the previous grants, some of the things that have changed in the meantime, and describe a little bit about this request that we have this go round. I should also mention that I believe Andy Schaffner with the Reservoir Company is also on, and I may ask her to help me with some of the accounting that she's been tracking on this. But if we can go to the next slide real quick, please. Again, this is for the Stillwater number 1 dam. Some of this is review from last year, constructed in 1939, decreed storage of just under 6,400 acre feet. It's at the headwaters of the Bear River, southwest of Yampa, kind of the end of the road into Forest Service Road 900, which is kind of the jumping off point, if you will, for that part of the Flat Tops, Devil's Causeway, that area as well. It's owned and operated by the Bear River Reservoir Company, primarily agricultural, but also some municipal water storage. The town of Yampa has a little over 100 acre feet of water storage in the reservoir as well. It's deemed a high hazard dam. Tyler talked about a little bit on the dam hazard classification on the last presentation, but we have a storage restriction that's been put on the dam at about 80% of full capacity. So, next slide, please. Just a quick update. Last year, we had put together a grant request that was funded by the roundtable, included some of the local roundtable funds, as well as the state CWCB WSRF funds. Those are listed there, 24,000 from the roundtable and 144,000 from the state WSRF. We went through and those were contracted in January. The local roundtable monies were to be used or kind of earmarked for design on this project. And then the WSRF monies from the state are for design and construction. The reason that we're coming back with the 2025 addendum here is that as we started looking at the design and working through this, the design with Wheeler, and started getting the consultant that's completing the design here, had a lot of back and forth with Dana with the Division of Water Resources. She went back and with some of the other folks on the looking at the design review, they looked back at the comprehensive dam safety evaluation. That's more or less a detailed risk assessment that we went through on this dam a number of years back, and decided to add a filter collar around the outlet conduit. The drain last year that we talked about was on the left groin of the dam. It was basically a drain to collect and manage the seepage coming off of the groin area on the left side of the dam. They just determined that they wanted to have this filter collar added around the outlet collar, and it's a little bit more detail work around the outlet collar there. They've also requested some stream channel stabilization work right at the outlet as well. So with that in mind, last year, Bear River Reservoir Company, we had the previous grants were based upon what we would call the engineer's cost estimate, which was the estimate that Wheeler had put together. But so last year we had Zach Dirt, who's the contractor that's looking at doing, it's involved with the sheriff project over on Trout Creek. they were in the area and we had them come up and provide us an updated construction cost, basically a more detailed construction cost based upon a site visit, walking around, looking at the access to the area and how they would complete the work. And as you would expect, things had gone up in the year between the engineer's estimate and the construction cost estimate, and they identified some more, issues or things that they needed to work around. So we have an increased cost for the construction, an updated cost, a bit firmer cost.
Hey,
Yes?
John, this is Meyer. We're having a little trouble hearing you in the room. Could you maybe speak a little louder?
Okay, is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, as I was saying, the Bear River Reservoir Company had a construction contractor come up and provide us a more detailed construction cost estimate last fall. So that's what this, our 2025 addendum incorporates those costs. And the costs also include additional engineering oversight that's going to be needed for monitoring and documentation of the construction. So that's kind of the reason we have this addendum. If we can move on to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the actual costs here for the project. The first two items there are the costs or the funding that was contracted through the roundtable and the WSRF from our grant last year. What we've also done is we've updated our application, and it was submitted in May to the Colorado River District. That'll be heard in June for construction cost, $123,000. We've submitted an application, a grant request to the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District. That'll be heard next week. We've also submitted and presented an application to the Yampa River Fund for $45,500 that would be used for construction. Expect to hear on that in June. So the one that we're asking for and this presentation is about is this Yampa White Green Roundtable funding in 2025 of $94,000. That would be earmarked for construction. And then the cash match from the Bear River Reservoir Company, I see I got river spelled wrong there, is we will match 123,000 based upon the assumption that we're getting all these grants. So that brings it to a project total of 615,000.
Hey, John, we're still having, give us a second. We're gonna see if we can turn up the sound on our end. We're still having trouble.
Maybe mute Al or do himself.
Yeah, can you, I can mute him.
Background noise, I don't think it's John.
There we go.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, are you good to go, Kristen?
Everyone else is muted.
Okay, yeah, just try to speak up, John. There's a lot of background noise in the room today for some reason.
Okay, well, I got my microphone right up close here. I don't know. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
You good? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, continue.
Well, again, this is the summary of the cost estimate here. I guess with that, I'd open it up for any questions that anyone from the roundtable has of myself or Andy, who's joined here on the call as well.
Okay, any questions for John on this project here in the room? Yeah.
Yeah, if Frank may be able to ask you, I'm a little confused because the same project, but there's an increase in cost, and so there's a second ask. What is the additional increase in cost to the 2024 grant? Total project cost.
Are you looking for?
And what is the current?
Yeah,
The-
y-
Go
can you
ahead,
hear
Andy.
me? Okay, if you can hear me, yeah. The increase is $375,000 over our projected costs in the 2024 grant application.
And the original, so it's about double, what was the original project cost?
The original was 240,000, with the increase of 375,000, the total being 615,000 now.
And then that first one, we only put in 24,000, but now being asked for 100,000. So
Yeah, so
we're getting a proportional higher
So we
share of
put
the
in, so we put in 24, but the state put in another 100.
right, but we're being asked for a higher proportion of this, of the increase.
Yes,
Percentage basis, yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
So, Andy, this is Jeff Myers. What? That's a pretty big miss. And I know my boss would want to know what happened here, I think. Well,
Yeah, maybe I can speak to that. I think that the increase, one is associated with the collar drain around the outlet conduit. That was an add from the Division of Water Resources review of the comprehensive dam safety. So that's an additional feature that's been added to the project. You know, one of the other increases is associated with the construction cost estimate, getting a contractor up there versus an engineer's cost estimate. You know, the engineers took some typical costs. You know, the construction cost estimate is looking at, you know, going up on site, looking at access, a number of those issues that are going to have a more direct impact on the cost. And then there's also additional costs going to be associated with this collar work because it is more of a detailed type project, and we're going to have more documentation for our as-built report provided to the Division of Water Resources. So it's
Go ahead.
It's not really it's a there's been components that have changed, and we've got firmer construction cost estimates, I guess is the takeaway from what's changed from 2024.
So it was filter drain that was not requested by the state, that was an add. Two sections of the river channel just below the dam needed to be stabilized. That was not in the original estimates, and that came up after the fact. And then just having the people that are working on Sheriff's Reservoir come over and look at the project. As you know, I think we ended up having to give more money to Sheriff at least twice because of the distance from anywhere that the construction was taking place. So, but those are the differences. Answer your, Ken?
I have a question, yeah, so there's if I heard correctly, it only fill the reservoir up to 80% of the level
Today.
Yes. And this would then make it to where we could fill it 100%.
That's our
Yes.
Great.
I thought it was more restricted than that. Was it?
Well, so they did some original, so it was down, Andy, you might know the numbers better, but the original restriction was down in the 60s. You guys did some work, got it up to the 80 that it is now, and this will take it to 100, is that correct?
Yeah, originally it was 60%, and actually it wasn't because of the work we did. When they did the comprehensive dam risk assessment, they decided that the 60% really wasn't warranted. They upped it to 80% that we were able to store. And Water Resources has assured us that if we do these components, that the restriction will be removed, as far as we need to construct the blanket drain and also the filter collar. Those are absolutely necessary to remove the restriction, and they highly recommended do the stabilization in the channel below the river, but below the reservoir.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Will?
So a couple comments. One, I guess, is to reiterate, like, construction cost increasing beyond the engineer's estimate is definitely not a one-off from this one. It's happening almost all over. The construction costs are what the contractor estimates they are. You can't hardly dial it in. So that, and then this doesn't change anything, but I misspoke at the Yampa River Fund, thinking that the restriction was down like even 20%, like it was flip-flop. So like I said, it doesn't probably change anything, but it's just kind of a misunderstanding that we were deliberating over at the Yampa River Fund the other day.
Okay, any other questions for Andy or John here in the room or online? Sally, you want to go to that next slide for us? So hearing none, I would take a motion to approve this grant request for $94,000 for the Stillwater Reservoir Drain and Collar project.
So moved.
Okay, Jackie's motion.
Hey, all, could I interrupt for a second? I just want to let everyone know I have a potential conflict here with on this project, so I'm going to abstain from voting. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, so I have a motion on the floor from Jackie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Kent. Any further questions or discussion on this project? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of this grant request for $94,000 for the Stillwater Reservoir Drain and Collar project, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the approval of this grant, please say nay. Okay, I don't hear anybody. Motion is approved. Okay, it's a letter of support.
Yep, Sally, if you want to go to the next slide.
Okay, so Frank, so the letter of support that's in your packets is the wrong one. It's the one that they sent, and I told Frank that I would rewrite it to more closely match the previous one and add the things that we as a Basin Roundtable add. And I forgot to do that until today. So the letter, when we get to that point, Sally, maybe we can pull that letter up. It's in the same folder as all the grant stuff for the letter of support.
Okay.
Go ahead, Frank.
Thanks for that, Steve. No problem. This is, as Steve alluded to, a letter for support, no grant funds being asked for tonight with this one. It's from Rivers Edge West, and John Leary will be presenting. There was a project summary loaded up to the website. Just ignore the draft letter of support because that was the original one. So this is for a water plan grant. And with that said, in order to keep things moving forward, I'll let John, if you're ready to go, just take it from here. Go to that next slide, Sally.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned, my name's John Leary. I'm a restoration project manager with Rivers Edge West. We're a nonprofit based in Grand Junction, and I am asking the roundtable for a letter of support for a CWCB grant application to their water plan grant fund for riparian restoration and community outreach along the White River. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Cool. So yeah, we're still refining this, but we're pretty close. We're planning to submit for the July 1st deadline. So we have a little bit of time with CWCB to get this finalized. But I did want to run it by you guys. I think we're in a good place to do that. We're looking to treat 45 acres of the riparian area along the main stem White River with removal of invasive weeds, mostly tamarisk and Russian olive, and revegetation with desirable and native plants. It's about, the 45 acres are about evenly split between BLM and private lands. We would also like to host 2 seed ball events with the 4-H club and or the Meeker Elementary School in Yampatika. We've done 2 of these and gotten a lot of positive feedback. And it's been a really fun way for youth engagement and for revegetation as well. We're including 1 workshop, and kind of the impetus for that is we started working on some private land 2 years ago in a pretty visible area, and it's been gaining a lot of attention. And so we want to make sure that people are aware of the resources that are available, both technical and financial. We're partnering with the White River and Douglas Creek Conservation Districts for that workshop. Monitoring and treatment data all put online and publicly available. We're also looking to use herbicide lances, which are a relatively new tool. So looking into testing the efficacy and efficiency of those. Partnering with Western Colorado Conservation Corps for young adult crew, and also working with private contractors for mastication and likely foliar herbicide applications as well. If you could go to the next slide, please. We do have the sites identified. We've also had conversations. I think Ashley Garrison is on this call too. I think we have a tentative potential okay on being a little bit flexible on the sites with CWCB, and the motivation for that is with looking at a 2 to 3 year grant timeline and having a landowner focused workshop. Having a little bit of flexibility in the final locations that we treat could be really nice if we do find some good potential matches and landowner interests that want to kind of kickstart some projects that they would like to do with some of this funding that comes out of the workshop. These sites include revegetation as well. The locations of the seed balls, we do try to do them on the restoration sites. But that becomes really dependent on partners and what their transportation is looking like and how far they're willing to drive with a van load or a bus load of young kids. So sometimes we'll end up on private lands that are closer to where they're based out of, or we'll try to go to one of our restoration sites as well. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this is the budget as of last week. It is not finalized, but we're certainly planning on staying kind of in this area as far as our ask. We're just waiting on some final conversations with partners. So we're looking at our match sources are from NIFWIF and BLM, both of which are secured, and the landowner time, which is secured as well, and probably underestimated too. 88,000 for implementation and supplies for the contractor and for conservation corps, and then also trying to include landowner honorariums so that for the workshop we can try to help provide for some of the travel expenses that landowners may have. So those would, I don't know the exact form of that. We're kind of working through the best way to do that. The capacity is a little bit higher as a percentage than I typically prefer for, implementation focused projects. But that is for not only the project management, but the workshop planning, workshop attendance, the 2 outreach events. And we're also including some partner capacity to host that workshop to try to cover some of their costs as well. On the right is a list of partners as of now. Like I said, we're pretty still a little early in this process. But these are all folks that we've talked to, and if we haven't already, we'll be reaching out to for letters of support and gauging their interest in their level of participation, and certainly open to discussions with other folks that may be interested. That's my whole presentation. Happy to answer any questions with the remaining time. Thank you.
John, appreciate it. Anyone have any questions in the room or online?
I do. So did I hear you say that part of this money would go to pay for travel to the meetings or travel to the workshop?
Yes, but are you talking about for staff or for landowners, for attendees?
Well, you tell me, what are you proposing?
So it's both. That second number, the 54,757, that's kind of, we've included that in our capacity costs. And so that's for travel to the workshops, the site visits, all of that. And then the travel for landowners is to try to cover some of their gas expenses if they're interested in that.
Help me understand. This is to travel to the demonstration project that gets done. I'm struggling paying for travel for people to go to look at a project.
I think it's more to the workshop. But go ahead, John.
Oh, sorry, I thought I heard someone else talking in the background. Yeah, I understand that. I think it just comes from an understanding on my end that landowners are busy, and we appreciate their time. And if we can help to try to cover some of their needs, then I'm happy to do so.
But that won't be roundtable money, right? That's other funding.
Yeah, the funding is
Correct.
via the YWG grant. This is just a letter of support.
Yeah.
From the roundtable.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's up to the water plant grant, yeah, if they choose to pay for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand your hesitation on that. When I found out that that was a possibility, I was a little surprised as well, but I've chatted with some other folks who have done workshops, and they've said that it really helped having higher numbers at the workshops. So we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And as I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, John. I was just, we're working on pulling up the letter of support, so people in the room can see it, or people on Zoom.
Oh, gotcha. And yeah, and as I think I heard someone say in the background, sorry, it's a little choppy on my end. Yeah, we're not asking for any money from the Basin Roundtable. This is all with NIFWIF BLM and then potentially CWCB funds.
I'm just curious, just a stupid question. What's a seed ball event?
Yeah, so we've done one with the 4-H club and one with Yampatika and Meeker fifth graders. It's making kind of golf ball sized balls of that contain like a native pollinator mix, and you mix it with clay and soil. And so the idea is that it kind of, for the seed, it kind of provides a medium that the seed can grow in and kind of protects it. And then they break down on site and hopefully germinate. And so there's that end of it. And then it's been a really great outreach tool because you get a bunch of kids and they get to play with mud and talk about plants and pollinators, and then they get to throw dirt balls, as far as they can if they want.
There you go. With regards to the herbicide, what's that treatment look like, and what would the herbicide?
What is that? Yeah.
What is the herbicide? Is it fish friendly? Aquatic vertebrate friendly?
So Typically, what our approach has been to use the cut stump method on these trees, and so cutting it flat and as close to the ground as possible, and then applying usually a 50 to 100% concentrate of usually triclopyr or glyphosate.
That's to where you cut it off, you paint it on that.
Yeah, so that's one. Well, one that's the recommendation, the recommended use on the label. And another thing that I like about that is that it's being applied directly to the stump. So there's much less of a risk for drift and things like that. Another benefit is that when we're working with youth crews, there's no mixing of herbicides on the site. It just goes directly into their app. They use small pump bottles. So it goes directly from the larger jug into those. And so there's just much less of a chance of spillage or accidents with that.
And you won't be removing the roots of the tamarisk or themselves, physically removing the roots.
No, we are not trying to do any type of root ball or whole tree removal or plucking or any of that. Even for the contractor with the mastication, that's still just mulching it down. Again, as close as possible. I think usually we aim for, in our scope of work with contractors, we do a maximum of 5 inches and try to keep it lower. And that's all decided, those are things that will be in conversations with both with the landowner and the whichever land management agency that we're working with as far as their preferences and protocols.
I have a question.
Any other
too.
questions for John?
I'm trying to raise my hand. I can't find the thing on my Zoom app, so.
Al,
This is
go ahead.
Thank you very much, Steve. This is Al Vandenbrink, by the way.
Hey, Al.
I do have some concerns. I guess I'm not too familiar with that honorarium piece to where they're paying landowners to travel time out there. John, I understand where you say it's going to help make it a little bit easier to get people there. I get it. You're paying them. I really understand that. But I do express some concerns about the basin supporting that piece there. The other part is, where's the portion? Is there the landowner on that, or the work that's happening on the private lands? Is there any financial contribution coming from them, or is all this work going to be done on their property at no cost?
It's at no financial cost with the landowners. Their support is coming from a lot of the maintenance work and preparation that needs to be done.
So it's more in kind, John?
Sorry?
It's more in kind? Cost?
Correct, yeah. Correct.
Landowners. Jackie?
I was just gonna say that generally the rationale behind paying landowners or participants to come to workshops is to spread the practice. You're not gonna have, as all of you know, none of you are gonna go to a workshop just because someone's paying for your gas to go there. You have to sit there all day. So unless you have an interest in the thing you're going to learn about, you're not going to get some gas money that you paid in your gas tank to get there. Doesn't make any sense. So the purpose is, hey, we got a new method, it's working in places, maybe this will help you on your ranch. It's a better, or your operation, whatever it is, it's a different way of doing things. You wanna learn about it and try it out, here you go. So, I mean, I get why it's, something that we can talk about, but just from perspective, this is a very common thing that happens in Colorado, and it is effective. And that's the only way you get, change long-term to be created and happen. So I just thought I would share that I've seen this in a lot of grants. This isn't like, whoa, brand new. So.
Right. So
Thanks for your comment.
I've done several collaborations with Rivers Edge West through our White River Alliance. And I gotta tell you, the highlights, a couple highlights are, this is really about putting boots on the ground. We've been struggling to find proactive
agencies that are willing to tackle invasives. We got one right here. And relevant to travel, I bet I put in more than 1,000 miles of driving for these kind of events. I've never gotten paid a penny for anything. So I don't know if that's a good carrot, but we have been talking. I did a little field trip with John last week. And what the big emphasis was with landowners is that they have to be proactive. Because if they're not interested and they're not gonna try to get rid of some of these invasives, it's not worth doing. We're hoping the lower white will join our efforts because it takes a collaboration, a team to tackle these invasives. And so anyway, my hat's off to John, the seed balls, which I haven't seen yet. You see Ampatika is one of the partners. This is an educational approach. Although I want to see boots on the ground, bringing the young kids and young farmers and ranchers into this, getting them involved is part of the whole process of our educational component to the roundtable. So anyway, my hat's off to John because he is really, I mean, the first time he came to one of our meetings, we chewed him up pretty bad because we wanted to see something done. And I'm one of those people that I'd rather be out in the field than at the table. And John's been showing us time and time again with his collaborations and efforts that he's wanting to tackle these invasives on the lower white. So anyway, that's my pat on the back to John and Rivers Edge West.
Got our Capo update.
Thanks, Sean.
From Batika. Today, they talked about this partnership with John and this whole project.
Yeah, I know I'm a guest, so I won't take up too much time, but just want to reiterate on the landowner honorarium conversation. In a CWCB water plane grant that we submitted, Friendly and submitted last year for one of our projects, we were encouraged by both Ag Alliance and CWCB themselves to include honorariums for landowners to cover their travel costs. So this is just if you're curious if this is going to be like unheard of for CWCB during their review process, it's not at all. They actually encourage it.
I'll just chime in, and John Stephen Hank from BLM on there. We're actually chatting with John to extend what they're doing in White River into BLM portions of the Yampa Basin, similar stuff. And the question I'm glad I thought of everybody here is a lot of the Yampa is private, right? There's only small portions of BLM that we can actually do this on, but if we can use that as a toehold, work with like this group of people in the Yampa Basin, maybe expand some of this onto some of the private in some areas and also do this work here. I think that would be a good measure, but we are talking, trying to get some site visit scheduled with John to come up and look at some areas like BLM to try to expand, essentially add some more money to what we're already doing with them to cover that and just continue that work here. Just okay.
Steve, if I could just one more thing, as landowner in this area, there are parts of the White River that you can't get to the river because there's so much Russian olive and tamarisk. And that to me is the big issue on what John and Rivers Edge is trying to do. And so I think that's the big picture here. And we're making, as a collaboration, a big headway. And so, as Sean said, he's really to be congratulated for his persistence and hard work.
All right, so Sally's got the letter that I've drafted up. It's out on the May 2025 under the Rivers Edge West folder. I probably will not print this letter and sign it and ship it for a week or two. So if you guys want to take a look at the letter and have any suggestions that you'd like something else to be in the letter, I'm okay with that. Just telling you that I probably need to send it off sometime around the 25th of May. I like to be a couple of days ahead of the deadline. The deadline's either May 31st or June 1st. I forget which one of those. But it is out there if you want to take a look at it.
I make a motion that we approve the letter of support as written. I mean, as requested. Or the
Okay.
project as
Yes.
requested.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion in the room or online?
Seems like a really worthwhile effort.
I just wanted to say real quick, y'all, this is Mario. I think it was a couple of years ago, I did a seed ball thing with John and some college students, and they liked it too. And that area that we treated is still pretty much Russian olive free. There was not a lot of recruitment, and the seed balls took pretty well. It's a spot that I visit pretty regularly, so it for what we did a couple of years ago, it worked well, and it was quite an outreach opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Mario.
I got a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
I know this isn't, we're just doing a lot of support and it's not for money, but I wanna let everyone know this is huge growth for this roundtable. We've been involved with this for a long time. And there was a time when this roundtable didn't want to look outside of the river channel or the reservoir. So this is really cool to see, you know, we're growing as a group, we're understanding, we're learning from years of doing this, that the riparian habitat is connected to the river, specifically with tamarisk that can deplete the water, of course. But I just want to compliment us as a roundtable for supporting a project like this.
I would add to that, that there's a big difference between supporting a letter and putting money toward it.
For sure. And I would, you know.
If that doesn't tell you where I'm thinking. Better listen
Well,
close.
we can always disagree, but I just want you to know it's good. You didn't deny it this time.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of a letter of support for River's Edge West Riparian Restoration Project, please say aye.
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 Okay, anybody oppose the letter of support for River's Edge West Riparian Restoration Project? Please say nay. Okay. John, I just might add so I like to put in in our letter of support, what the ask is from the CWCB water plan grant. So right now I'm matching the number that's in your slides. If that number changes, as you're drafting your final, let me know what that is so I can change it in our letter of support.
Yeah, we'll do. Are you still thinking about leaving it up for review so people can see it for a week or so?
Yes, yeah, it's out there. You just gotta go into on our website, hit the BRT meeting, and then hit go into the May 2025, and there's a directory with your stuff in it, and that letter is part of that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think within a week or so, I should have a finalized number for you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one last slide and I will be done. This was the last cycle for 2025 as far as grants go. So up on the screen, our next round starts with applications due September 17th. And then our first grants committee meeting is October 8th. So we take a little bit of a 4-month sabbatical, if you will. As customarily I've done and kind of my standard ending to these committees or these grants presentation is I want to thank the committee. We put a lot of time into this. We put a lot of thought into this. There's a lot of vetting of these grants before they even get here. There's a lot of phone calls. There's a lot of emails. There's a lot of back and forth. And I appreciate everyone's support. It's an active and very robust committee. And I just want to acknowledge those committee members and thank them again. So unless anyone has any questions for me, those are my final thoughts. So thanks everyone for your patience and your time tonight.
Thanks, Frank. All right, Deidre.
Okay, well, our president is gonna introduce.
Okay, thank you. Yes, in addition to the Yellow Jacket Water Conservation District, I'm president of the White River Alliance. And this presentation that you're just giving is riparian restoration. So this is right up the alley of what John Leary is doing. In fact, in the last couple, work sessions that we've had, Rivers Edge West has been a big partner. And riparian restoration, oh, I gotta tell you, I did my last snowmobiling, about 10 days ago. On the Upper White River. That's how we measure snowpack, by the way. That's about a month sooner than our last snowmobile trips several years back. So the White River's shrinking. It's down about 15% in the last 20 years. So riparian restoration has everything to do with preserving the hydrology of inside streams, ephemeral or year-round streams. And the stream called Yellow Creek, which is about halfway between Rangeley and Meeker, has been a poster child for riparian restoration. It has all the features that we love to demonstrate that have a real need for riparian improvements. It has beaver analogs, it has a lot of tamarisk, it has brand new willows that we just introduced. And all these things that come in, and we also have kids coming down in the future with the seed balls, I think that John's referring to. All this has come together with multiple groups of agencies. The White River Alliance is glad to be a part of this. And, but this is right up the alley of what John Leary does and what we think is beneficial to ranchers and landowners, those that don't like beaver, like me, because I'm having terrible beaver problems lately. It's the concept of holding back sediment, raising the water table, improving the riparian. And for ranchers, they can put money in your pocket because you can put more animal units on a healthy riparian than a deserted riparian. So anyway, I'll turn that over to Deirdre and let her take it from there.
If you'll just excuse me for a minute, my friend, Mr. Chairman, without making any judgment as to the importance of any topics that were discussed before or in the future, we're probably about 15 minutes behind.
Or at least 10.
Oh, speed it up.
Speed
Stop.
up, please.
Okay, I'll put myself on super speed. Our goal here tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of the White River Alliance and our president, Sean Welder. And our goal is to recruit your interest in what we believe is a very important topic. We have a monthly speaker series where we have experts like Stephen Hampton, who came last month, and I recommend highly for this group, who teach us about best practices and things that are going on across particularly the West. The whole topic of riparian restoration of beavers is a hot topic. There was recently BeaverCon in Boulder, sold out in 1 week. 500 people from around the world traveled to Boulder to learn about this topic. As Sean said, we're seeing our river decline steadily. And what we've learned through our presentations is that rivers are circulatory systems, and we are slowly losing the tributaries that go into it. We're interested in our river basin, in learning and doing hands-on what we can to bring back the perennial streams, as well as, which are the ones that flow all the time, as well as the ephemeral streams that are part-time. And so just quickly, next slide, thanks, Ellen. We did a workshop after working with the Nature Conservancy, who helped us get some significant funding. And we were able to attract several landowners from Routt County, Moffett, and Rio Blanco, as well as other counties around the state. Next slide. Thank you. We had a number of partners, Rivers Edge, Audubon, American Rivers, Trout Unlimited. There are many, many groups that are interested in this, and we wanted to learn how this can be done to bring back springs and creeks, to revitalize our riparian using nature-based solutions that are low cost. And interesting to know a little bit of history on this. The problem basically started about 200 years ago when beavers started to be trapped in the United States, and beavers are a keystone species. That means that when you have beavers, you're able to create ecosystems that bring many other animals, birds, and fish. And when you don't have them, you lose all of those. Why were people killing and trapping the beavers? Everybody was like an iPhone. Everybody needed a beaver hat. And that was the popularity of getting the beavers at that point. Next slide, please. In addition to losing the keystone species, beaver were almost wiped out across America. We saw vast amounts of overgrazing with huge numbers of cattle and sheep coming into the West, tens of thousands of animals that were simply left there until it was time to take them to the trains and to processing. And next slide, thank you. In addition, recently, we've seen two particular stresses. We just talked about tamarisk and Russian olive. This is a big problem on the White River, big problem. The closer you get to Rangeley and Utah, the worse it gets. The other problem we have, this is taken right across the street from our ranch, unbelievable numbers of wild horses. One of the reasons that I helped start the Meeker Mustang Makeover to help justify gathers. Should be 175, there are over 2,000 horses and they are overgrazing. And that creates further erosion of our water passages, taking away grass, and we are losing our water table. Next slide, please. Thank you. I want to give a shout out to the Palisades Insectary. They've been enormously helpful. We've released well over 100,000 tamarisk beetles, also leafy spurge, which by the way, I saw driving up to the entrance here. These are two big problems on our river. The bugs are making a very important difference, but it takes time. Next slide, thank you. So what we've learned is without the beaver, overgrazing, you see your water table drop. The erosion brings the water table down, and what used to grow and be prairie grasses, peons means in Ute, tall grass. Hard to find that now in the peons. So water table is dropped and we're left with greasewood and sage. So we've got to reverse that process. And for streams like Yellow Creek, which you're all, I hope, planning to visit in the next meeting, you will see that with beaver dam analogs and natural beaver work, we are seeing a reversal of the process. Next slide. So the lower, okay, I've just talked about that, sage and greasewood, and you're seeing our range change from grassland to sage and greasewood and very little grasses. Next slide, please. So we work working closely with the local BLM office and hydrologists. We've had a number of areas approved to put in beaver dam analogs. For those that may not be familiar with what a BDA or a beaver dam analog is, it's a man-made a beaver dam, and you try to slow the water, not stop it, just slow it down, and create some habitat that beavers can then move into, take over, and do the work. And they do. It's really quite extraordinary. You'll have a chance to see that first. There are many, many benefits to beavers. Some of them include the sediment when the water slows down, drops, keeping it out of dam, out of reservoirs, helping irrigators avoid all the problems with high water branches and sediment. And it also cleans a great deal of the minerals from the water, creates better fish habitat, as we learned, and good for livestock, good for wildlife, many, many positives. Next, please. Thank you, Sally. So at our workshop a year ago, we had several experts, including Bob Budd, director of the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resources. He talked a lot to us about it's not just putting in beaver dam analogs. It's working with livestock owners and graziers on how to manage their livestock so that they don't eliminate the forage. It's really important to leave some forage so that you can have healthy soil stability. And next one, please. So as I mentioned, slowing the water recharges. The water is stored underground like a big sponge, creating a more consistent flow. It's trapping the sediment before it gets to the river and slowing and making it a more consistent flow so you don't, we have a lot of erosion on our riverbanks, and this helps slow that process down, particularly in extreme weather events, rainstorms, things of that nature. Next slide, thanks. So, well, this is a picture of where we just put One Rock Dams. There's a gentleman by the name of Bill Zedike, who is the kind of the father, if you will, of how to effectively slow down water and recharge ephemeral creeks and streams that just flow intermittently. And then what we've done here is a situation where you put the beaver dam analog up and you have to until the beavers come in, you have to keep repairing it, fixing it. And that's what's happening right there. Next slide, please, Sally. So next steps, continuing our work with a number of organizations, looking for additional landowners and looking to expand our work both on places like Yellow Creek, Douglas Creek that flow year round, and the many, many ephemeral creeks that only flow part times of the year by putting in small One Rock dams to slow the water and restore the riparian. Next one. So the point is, do we want something that looks like this? Or do we want healthier riparian habitat for livestock, for wildlife, and for protecting our water future? Next one, please. So we're hoping that, I'm just hoping this is the first time you hear something on this topic. There are so many other speakers that know more. And I know Stephen has been working in Moffat County, I believe, north of Craig and several other areas. There are many landowners who are getting on board on this. And I can tell you this year, as a cattle owner, we are seeing some of the driest BLM country that we've seen. So there's an urgency to this story. So thanks for giving us a little time on the agenda. And if there's a question, I'd be glad to take it. Otherwise, I'll move on. Jeff.
First of all, congratulations on doing a really nice job staying on time.
It's interesting too,
We
but okay.
appreciate that. I wonder, you didn't talk at all about reintroducing animals. So does that ever play a role in your strategy here for, building some structures and then taking some of Jeff's beavers and.
Oh, are you talking about like introducing cattle and sheep?
No,
Or
I'm talking
other
about
people's
introducing more beavers.
OPB, other people's beavers?
Yeah. Bringing in some beavers.
I get a lot of calls by landowners in Routt County who want me to take their beavers. But there are rules about it, and there can be diseases that are transmitted. The state of Colorado, and Stephen is really the expert, but the state of Colorado, the legislature is working on a beaver plan, as I understand it. And Jackie probably knows about this as well, to try to help landowners prevent beavers where they don't want them, like our irrigation ditches, and how we can transplant them to places that need them. That's my understanding, but Stephen, Jackie, and maybe there are others who know.
I would just chime in that Friends of Yampa is partnering with Yampa Valley Sustainability Council on, there's a third option sort of. You don't want beavers, you can't really move them because of regulation restrictions and concerns with spreading invasives. There are really tested ways to coexist with beavers, things like pond levelers or caging valuable vegetation. So we will have a program up and running soon that if you don't want to get rid of your beavers because it's likely that if it's good habitat, new beavers are just going to move in. There are ways to coexist where sort of both a lot of multi-benefits can be.
So it's two-edged really. A lot of people want to know, how do I get rid of beavers? And then there are those who would, how do I track beavers? And how can I attract them to places specifically that we need them, off in the desert? So.
Isn't it the case that you can have just the right number? You can have way too few. You can have way too many. Isn't that true? Right?
Of beavers?
Of beavers, right.
I mean, in a given
So it's great to talk about peacefully coexisting with them. Because you're not the one who's got the big beaver dam that's knocking the water outside of your head king.
But I'm saying there are ways to let the beavers stay there and set the flood
Right.
level at a certain, like.
But I would say, I would argue, as an irrigator and a beaver owner of many, many beavers, that there's a right number of beavers for a habitat, and there's a way too many beavers for a habitat. And it just seems like improving this strategy would be relaxing the regulations. So we could take some from places where there's way too many
Put them where they
and
need.
put them in some
Like
places
the
where
desert.
there aren't enough.
And this is an issue, this is a process of education with landowners because, you know, right now they're eating holes in some of our irrigation, big hoses and things, and there's all kinds of issues with them. But there are experts, and I know the BLM has them, that can teach you how to mitigate some of the challenges and put them to work in other areas, so they can help us revitalize some of our springs and creeks. I'm going over, I don't wanna get in trouble.
I know,
Thank
and
you
it's the
for-
guy that's telling you you're going over.
I know, thank you for letting me present tonight, and I meant to say thank you to all of you for the hard work you do, having sat on this group. I know how much time it takes. Thank you.
So thanks, Deidre. So Sally will go over it here in a little bit, but one of the stops that we're gonna make on our Peppo tour on July 9th is to see some of this in action.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your time.
What? To see some of these beaver dams or whatever.
Their projects.
Yes, their projects.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Oh. Aaron, are you still online?
Yeah, Steve, I'm hanging in there, so I'm still
Hey,
here.
you're up.
Okay, thanks for giving me the few minutes tonight. Just a couple announcements. First of all, we do have some new staff that some of you might be interested in being aware of. We do have Casey Lyons, who's now our water commissioner in the Little Snake River Basin and Green, so districts 54, 55, and 56. Some of you might have heard of Casey Lyons. She is from the Maybell area and has lived in the community for quite some time. And then on the Elk River and then on the Yampa River on Steamboat, we have Mark Munger. Some of you might have heard of Mark Munger as well. Mark is Larry Munger's son. So that's who's now on the Elk River. Also, just to announce, I did recently appoint Willie Summers in my office as Assistant Division Engineer. He has been with me since 2019. So a big shout out to Willie and earning that role as Assistant Division Engineer. Moving on to measurement rules real quick, I just want you to know that we've always obviously had one date come and go as far as a deadline for compliance. Now for this summer, we are going to start enforcing some of those, that deadline and who hasn't come into compliance. We are going to start making sure that actions are taken to ensure that they do come into compliance. With that said, we are seeing some administration now, and structures not being in compliance is definitely making things a little tricky for us because we are being much more strict with our administration and individuals who want to either put a call on a system or divert water in priority. If they do not have structures that are in compliance, we're just flat out either not honoring the call or not letting them run in priority, even though we may have let them do that in the past. So definitely some stricter administration due to these measurement rules that we're enforcing right now. As far as other measurement rules around the state, if people are interested, Division 7, I think it was in December, they filed their rules, and I could be wrong, but I think it was in December they filed their rules with the court, and they had to protest. Those protests, the people that protested or entities that protested were more like a friendly protest. Those protests were resolved. The judge signed those rules here just recently, and so those rules come into effect starting June 1. As far as the next location for the rules taking place, the next location is Division 4, and Director Earlman has already started the stakeholder process for that. So he's already held a couple meetings for the process to get the rules going in Division 4. Going back to calls and enforcement of the calls this year, just so everybody knows, right now we only do have 3 calls in Division 6 occurring. We have one on Peons Creek, Talamanias Creek, And then our bigger one, it's a very challenging call to administer, is on the Michigan River, which doesn't affect or maybe interest anybody here because it's in the North Platte River Basin, but it is a very important call for us because it's a big call. Lastly, I heard Jeff give a little update. Jeff Rodriguez give an update on snowpack, and then I heard Mike Hamlin mention people are calling and asking where all the water is. Well, it's not in Colorado. And I will say that up here in the Northwest, we're pretty fortunate compared to people south of us. So we should feel very fortunate there. But tonight I was just looking at some snowpack graphs. I will say our runoff is looking very similar to 2018, maybe a little worse. Worse in the sense that it's coming off faster. And so I would say if people want to be comparing anything, compare things to 2018, at least for now. And it was interesting to take a look at the Maybell flow, the flows on the Yampa River Maybell in 2018. In 2018, the peak occurred on May 12th. Looking at our hydrograph for right now, the peak has not hit, and it's not going to hit tonight. It might hit early in the morning. I don't know. Who knows what the flows are going to do, but we haven't peaked yet. I'll just say that. But all of a sudden we might see a decline in our peak, or, daily diurnals will start to drop off. And then, so that's at Maybell. At the Boise Creek gauge, and you know what, I think I looked for 2021 for the Boise Creek. That was June 6th. So I would need to go back and look at what the Boise gauge on the White River was for 2018. But I think I can safely say that no matter what, our peak will have come and gone by May 30th. And that's not even a stretch, if you will. It's probably going to be much earlier than that. Then May 30th are peaks on our stream systems. So, people always ask, are you worried, Aaron? Are you stressed? And, we deal with what we have and in the river, just as everybody else does. And our administration will work with whatever we have in the river. If we have to administer different streams that we're not accustomed to administering, or just cut lower in our priority list than we ever have, well, then we'll do that. So, yeah, we just kind of work with what we have, just like all of our ranchers and water users. And that's all I have, Steve.
Thanks, Aaron. Anybody have a question for Aaron here in the room or online? I don't hear any, Aaron. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Becca, you're on.
All right. I just sent a request to shares. Oh, great. All right. I'll kind of try to run through this pretty quickly. But just want to let everyone know, we had a presentation a few months ago about the dredge and fill regulation that the state is putting forward. That is stakeholder engagement is ongoing. They won't start the formal rulemaking process until later in the summer. The River District is very involved in this. I'm not going to talk about this in detail to save you all, but if you have questions or comments on it, please, I'd be happy to hear them. Switching gears to the Colorado General Assembly, that is finished for the year, wrapped up on May 7th. It was a pretty boring year in terms of water bills. There wasn't really a whole lot for water bills, mostly just because of budget concerns. It was really kind of dominated by those concerns. But if you're interested in hearing about what water bills did pass, we always have someone who's following that during the legislative session. So happy to talk through it. As mentioned by Mike earlier, the River District is going to the CWCB board at their board meeting next week to offer the Shoshone water rights on the Colorado main stem for an in-stream flow water rights. That would just add an existing water right to it would add a use to the existing water right. In addition to hydropower, it would be adding an in-stream flow use. And CWCB, of course, has to be the ones to hold an in-stream flow right. The board will not make a decision next week, but essentially we'll be offering those into that water right, and then it will kick off an 120-day consideration period. We've had some more money come in for our funding on that project. We've had a $1 million commitment from Pitkin County. which is really great. And, we're still, waiting to hear on the $40 million federal, grant, from the B2B bucket. We also, the Colorado Water Center, this is a Colorado Mesa University Water Center that does research projects and kind of shares information for the Upper Colorado River. The Colorado River District provided some funding to this, to the water center this year for capacity building and to kind of reestablish this group. And they are looking for an executive director, so we just wanted to share that out with everyone in case you guys are, know people, pass around the information that this organization is looking for an executive director. And we do have a date for our 2025 annual water seminar. This is always held annually in Grand Junction. It is October 3rd this year, which is a great time to be in Grand Junction. It is not 110 degrees, so recommend it. To be determined what the topics and theme will be, but there's the date. I'm gonna skip over those couple things tonight. We'll talk about that at another meeting. And the last thing I just want to mention, I thought that the basic users might find this interesting. Down in the Gunnison River Basin, they have been doing some ASO snow flights to try to, like the Yampa has also been doing to gauge the snowpack with those aerial snow flights. And the Colorado River Basin Forecast Center actually used those flights this year to inform their forecast. And actually you can kind of see this a little bit, that blue line in the middle where it just like drops off and plummets. That was where they included the ASO forecast. And so it helped inform their forecast, and I thought it would just be interesting for you all to see, because I think we're all kind of still trying to figure out how we can use ASO data to better inform. So it is starting to be used by the CBRC. And that is, oh yeah, there's just one more slide showing that drop off. And this is in the, I want to say the North Fork of the Gunnison River. So you can just see they really had overestimated snowpack in the upper regions, and then when they put in the ASO data, it dropped the forecast. That's all.
Rebecca, why don't you go ahead and hang on to the screen share?
Oh, yeah.
Any questions for Rebecca? In the room online?
Could you elaborate real quick on the ASO data? I mean, I kind of get the gist of it, but
Yeah.
basically it's saying it kind of normalized it to what it actually is. So that dash line is what they predicted, and then we put ASO data in there. It,
Yeah, sorry, I went over that really fast. Essentially, ASO data is like taking a plane over the whole basin and kind of doing like a LiDAR thing to measure it in all regions, not just like a snowfall site, which is the one point, right? And so essentially, generally the CBRC is looking at snowfall data to try to get their forecasts. And in this case, they also incorporated that ASO flight data to give them a better idea of how much snow water equivalent they actually had. And so they found that their snow tells were basically not giving them the full picture, which is, I think one of those things that we all know, but it's not always being put into the data yet.
so I think what that says is how much it makes it more accurate, and how much that really helps forecasts.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a really good discussion earlier today at the Big River meeting, just about how looking at only snow water equivalents now, this is the point Tim brought up that I think is really important, is that just looking at snow water equivalent isn't always as accurate as it used to be, just based on a lot of changes that we're seeing.
Does the River District have, what they're saying they're going to do if the $40 million Shoshone contribution, federal contribution doesn't come through?
I don't think that's been decided, but that's definitely, you know, something for us to consider at some point. We're very hopeful.
All right. Jeff.
Okay, the Big River IBCC report, 10 minutes that we're probably barely going to have. I think it makes sense, given the April that we had, that we spend most of that time, or at least that we dedicate the first part of that time to the hydrology update. So let's do that with Rebecca, and the rest of the discussion is fairly minor in importance. So Rebecca had prepared a really good hydrology update, and I think it makes sense to start with that.
Is she gonna inform Mike which state has colder water?
Yes.
If I knew, I would be.
California. Wouldn't be here, would you?
Yeah. Is there a way, can I share?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. Well, I don't wanna belabor the, the basin look too much, because we talked about this quite a bit tonight, but just wanted to kind of show the swing graph. As Aaron said, and Jeff mentioned, April was really, really dry. It's kind of the make or break year for snowpack, or make or break month, and it did not pan out this year, so we were still pretty average back in March when I was looking at this and gave this update, but since then, that black line is this year really plummeted. You can just see it going from kind of that mid to low green average to just straight yellow and almost to red now. Nothing that we don't already know. But then what we haven't discussed really yet tonight is kind of the broader upper basin look. We know that, Southwest Colorado is looking quite a bit worse than up here. We're fortunate that we're not looking quite as bad as that. But when we're looking at the larger upper Colorado River Basin, this has also just kind of seen some really dry runoff forecasts. The April 1st forecast to the May 1st forecast changed by about 20%. And so we're now looking at a 20% decrease on the runoff forecast, so they made a forecast on April 1st, and that dropped 20% and within a month, just based on a really dry April, and 60% average precipitation in April. And so we went from essentially like over 4 million acre feet projected to go into Lake Powell in the April to July runoff, and that's dropped about 800,000 acre feet projected to just 3.5 million acre feet, which is about 55% of average. So that's just the April to July runoff. That's not the whole year runoff, but 3.5 million acre feet runoff is pretty low for the past 30-year average. So not looking great, and you can see kind of the CBRFC's forecast for Lake Powell inflow. These red or these pink bars are kind of their projections. The low end of the bar is the least likely kind of low end, and then that top pink box is the high end, but low likelihood, and then that blue line is kind of the mid range, what's most likely to happen. And you can see that pink bar just really dropped from April to May, which means that they're not expecting to get that high end anymore at all. It's much lower. So that is something, that is concerning, that Lake Powell's just gonna have a lot lower inflow than previous years. And the past 2 years we've been okay. So I'll hand it back to you, Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So I think Aaron's comment that we can kind of remember back to 2018 is very helpful. Something that makes sense to put into perspective. So that wasn't a very fun year. And I think that's what we should anticipate. Okay, Sally, can you bring back then the other slides? This is gonna go fast. I don't have a lot to add on the Big River, Colorado River negotiations update above what Amy talked about. Maybe, why don't you come right here? So Amy gave a high level view, and that's about all that's appropriate right now. You know, by July, we're probably going to know some things because there's a lot of informal state to state meetings going on. We just don't really know that right now. We did spend time in the Big River Committee talking about a frustrating media cycle where there was a paper put out by 6 water experts. And the very first principle in the thing was that it's probably going to be essential that curtailment occur in both the upper and the lower basin to reach the post-2026 agreement. So this is a frustrating thing, the way that thing was positioned, it really based on sort of a misleading approach to talking about that. Tim rightly jumped in and said, even so, it's probably going to be necessary to reach an agreement. Some kind of compromise is probably going to be necessary to reach some agreement. And of course, people like me who get on rants have to calm down after people like him say rational things. There are in that presentation, by the way, there are some very well thought out aspects, like the fact that we can't base basin reductions exclusively on inflow, but we have to think about rebuilding Howland Mead, right? The regime going forward after 2026 can't be the way it used to be. Well, whatever came in, that's what's going out. We've got to think about rebuilding the volumes in those reservoirs. So there are some good things in there, but it's just frustrating that NPR would carry an article like that. And so we talked about that. At the IBCC level, things are can you go to the next one? I think that's about the IBCC. This is really Kent's territory, but there was a very productive meeting in February. You know, the best I've attended in my 5 years on the IBCC. I think the tenor of those meetings is definitely turning. It's changing to a more productive, much more focused kind of discussion. The establishment of a subcommittee for homework so that when we have our 3 meetings a year, we get some things done in between to prepare for those was a big step. Those people have been working hard. They meet every month. The topics are around the low and no regrets. I know that we didn't get off to a great start in this group with low and no regrets, but we're going to do better. There actually are some good things there that will help river basins, basin roundtables work together and coordinate. And a lot of time is going into planning. The June IBCC meeting is on the 25th. It's in Grand Junction. Please think about coming if you can. And there's a lot of planning going on right now also for another C9. That was a high point. I think it's going to be good again. So with that, do you have any questions for me? Otherwise, I'll hand it off to the Pepos.
All right, Sally.
I do appreciate Rebecca's efforts in the hydrology update. She's just done a fantastic job.
Let me find where I'm going here. All right, let's see.
You don't think so?
Let's see, for the PEPO topics today, I'll try and keep it short. I know we're going a little over. I've got a story map update, for Yampatika. We've met with the subcommittee once, with the new contractor that is Four Corners. And so I think you guys have all gotten an email to hopefully, if you said you had maps, if you said you had pictures, Kristen sent out an email to please populate those folders with what you might have. The story map subcommittee is working really hard to kind of look at all the different pieces of information we have and try and make a synopsis of it and give it to the contractor. So what we need from you guys is pictures, maps, and things that you might think might need to go on the story map. And I'm gonna try and find, I had it up here. We are going to the White River for our field trip on July 9th. We're gonna do it in one day. So we're gonna start out at 9 a.m. in the morning and start out at the Blair Homes. And we'll have a presentation there. From there, we're gonna drive, towards Lake Avery, which is an hour away. So we can park our cars in Meager and carpool from there. Lake Avery will have some lunch and discussion from Yellow Jacket.
Yeah, Yellow Jacket.
And then after that, we'll head back to Agency Park and have a talk with Liz Chandler about the White River turn flow study. Then, for those of us who want to go to Peppo and Big River, we'll head back to the Meeker Fire Department and have our meetings starting at 5 probably. And then those who don't want to go can do something else in town, but we'll have the Big River, a little condensed version of it. So we'll try and end at 7:30 rather than 9 in Meeker, so it gives people a chance to get home anyway, so.
Yeah, so we talked about a 2 or 2.5 hour agenda length.
Yeah, a little later.
That's for Big River, Peppo, and the Roundtable.
No, so we're hoping to be done with the tours about 3.
Oh, okay.
Start the Big River start the Basin Roundtable meeting at 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd still have. So I will send out registration shortly, so check your email. So please register if you're gonna come so I can get proper numbers. We're gonna cap it at 40 people. That's a large number, so I don't think we'll get there. We didn't last year at Maybell, but hoping to have a lot of people show up because it's a chance to show off what you guys have been doing in the White River. So it's our chance.
What day is that?
It is
Wednesday,
July 9th.
9th.
So it will be, it's our next scheduled roundtable meeting day. So if you have any suggestions, of people who to reach out to for talks, please get a hold of me. Sally@YWG.com. And so the next thing, I want to talk about is the state messaging that, I went to the Peppo state messaging meeting in Silverthorne a couple weeks ago and joined virtually. And this was to talk about, after the C9, we gave suggestions as a roundtable as to what we would hope our state messaging came out as. And this was their report to us on what they've come up with. And so part of the state messaging they found was the most important throughout the basins was scarcity, supply, and water quality. And so those are some of the things that are important to everyone. What we were hoping from this state meeting is to come up with some facts, some fact sheets and things like that, that we could really use in our messaging for advertising this summer. That's gonna be a longer process. They're still working on it. So they will have some fact sheets and things like that, but in the future. So, we're hoping to, Patrick and I with our new Peppo grant is to work on the state messaging ourselves and do that advertising ourselves. We do have the new infographics we passed around. So that's what they came up with, from our suggestions. Yep, that's the infographic. And those are yours to take. And there's some from the other basins on the back table to see what they came up with. So, that's what was produced from their consultants. And thank you for signing up for the canopy. Really helpful to I'll get with you and see if you can do it. But just to get more people out there, other than me, so they don't always want to see me, so thank you for that. Placemats, we call them placemats, you have your maps now from, with the yellow, white, green, and the supply. We call it the snake map on the back, so that's just for you guys to have, and just refer to and have for yourself. For articles, we just had, I just wrote an article on the White River return flow study and, the local ditch and some innovations on, in our basin of how we're dealing with less water. So that was published, last week, I believe. And, I'm trying to keep it pretty, fast. So I think that's about it for me. But yeah, just be looking for lots of more information on the field trip. I do have an agenda going, but I'm not gonna show it now because we've just changed it. So, yeah, we'll be looking to probably carpool once we get there, but we'll figure that out. Any questions?
What time do you expect to start?
And 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize, so I should ask this during the grant for this, but does the 2026 budget for projects, does that include the storyboard or is that?
No, that was on the 2025. So,
Correct.
yeah. So that was phase 1 of 20 of the story map. Should be fully covered. We've got a little contingency with our $11,758. If we do potentially go a little farther than December, just to finish phase 1.
Gotcha, so to be determined for the project in 26 possibly, or?
Well, the project is what the project we're proposing and looking towards is the advertising with the consultant. Hiring in a consultant, Blue Fire specifically, that we've worked with them before, out of Steamboat to, work on some print ads and social media.
Okay.
To use in multiple years.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry, thank you. This is awesome. All these materials are great. It's amazing to see how far we've come. Just gonna throw it out there. What if we did a virtual Basin Roundtable meeting, not on the same day as the tour? That seems like a really
We are
long
so talking about.
day. Okay, I was just gonna throw it out there that's rough.
And the virtual option is always there, so if you wanna go home in the meantime, then you touch.
Sure, no, I
Yeah,
get it. I just think
yeah.
a productive meeting doesn't usually happen after being in the field and traveling all day.
Yeah.
So if we're shooting for productive meetings, then.
And I was worried I'm very worried about that, it's a long day. So I think in our next fall meeting or fall field trip, we're gonna do just that, have the field trip one day, meetings a separate day. So we're gonna try something out, try it out both ways and, please let me know how you feel about it, so, but we did try and shorten them just so people can get home at a decent time on your field road, so, but yeah. I appreciate that, and does it, raise of hands, anybody planning on going to the field trip here? Anybody?
There's an honorary. Oh,
You don't roll like that. Okay, thanks for that. That's all I have, unless you have any more questions.
Okay, so the next meeting is at the at this point, it's at Rio Blanco Fire Station in Meeker. And we talked about that very thing, Jackie and Peppo, and we didn't make a decision, so we'll have to decide what we're gonna do there for sure.
Just because it's 14 hours
Yeah.
for people in Steamboat and like some of us have families and kids and stuff, and so
And
to
jobs.
be productive, you know, it's just, you'll lose some people on one or the other.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. is that
100%.
It's kind of states for meeker to host the meeting and have people not be able to stay.
And we want the most participation possible, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever,
100%.
good luck on your deliberation.
Yeah.
Yeah, watch for emails.
Hey, Steve. Does anybody from the White River Conservation District want to talk about their presentation coming up May 22nd on the return flow studies?
So I myself have heard that presentation twice. The more detailed one that Rebecca had, with the Colorado River District. So Dr. Ryan's given that numerous times. I don't even know how many times at this point.
Yeah.
But
The paper's on the, Boy Green, homepage,
Sure.
just. if you want.
So that's a no.
It's fine.
I got an email about it and I'm like, looks like another good possibility. Don't say anything, so.
Oh, well, we are talking about it. We're talking about it, with Liz Chandler at Agency Clerk, so it will be discussed
Okay.
at the field trip.
It was presented at the last, it was at the last roundtable meeting you had it.
With that, I'm done.
Agency Park is where the alluvial deposits are that aquifer that they're talking about. But it's on the way up to Acre.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I think that's not border.
Second. Second, that's on you.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. I don't believe we have anything else, Kristen or Kelly.
Ken wants me to say that everybody's invited to the Headwaters Colorado meeting tomorrow at the Hayden Airport from 10 to 1.
Oh.
See you there. And they
All
have
in
good
favor?
food, so please come on over.
Is there an honorarium? That's all we want to know.
I don't know about that. I'm not part of that organization, but I can say that the hosting entity, the airport, has really good food.
Thanks, so, yeah.
All right, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
I'm
Well, no,
Adios, muchachos.
You're pretending.
On the free bridge.
Those are one of my favorite topics.
I told teacher, it is.
I just like to learn about the part of just ready for the process. It just takes a lot, so.